What's up? Welcome back. I'm John Stark from MacTheMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic, and today I'm going to review Best Picture. I'm sorry, I meant to say one battle after another. Um, the eventual winner of the Best Picture Oscar at the 2025 Academy Awards, 2026 Academy Awards. It's 2025 is the year it came out, but 2026. It's always weird to try to have to figure that out and think, well, we're celebrating the films of 2025, but we're doing it in 2026. So is it the 2026 Academy? It shouldn't be. It should be the 2025 because they're 2025 movies, but the show is in 26. Anyway, one battle after another. You're probably thinking to yourself, sir, with tears in your eyes, you're coming to me, sir. Sir, why have you not reviewed this film yet? And I'll be honest with you, because my first viewing of this was without audio description, and I could tell at the time that because of the conversation that was being had around one battle after another, that I would need to have a better understanding of what was happening in the movie. So thanks to HBO Max and the drop of the film with audio description, finally, I was able to follow the film with audio description. The audio description track was not what I expected, but I thought it was perfectly fine in terms of what it offered. Like it didn't. It's I don't know what I expected from the movie, but it just wasn't what I expect. I don't know how to quantify that. Like if you had asked me, what do I think it's going to sound like? I would have said more epic and dramatic. And I think the audio description, the choice of the narrator, and the way it's read is a little bit more laid back. And that's probably because this film has defied classification. It's in the Golden Globe comedy or drama. It's also kind of like an action movie. It's a thriller. It's a whole bunch of different things. So trying to pigeonhole it as one thing is not really a thing. So I guess once you really see the film, trying to pick like really neutral audio description that doesn't really swing to one genre or the other is the way to go. Even with that, I think the voicing is light for a film that's so bombastic, and with a score that is just takes over. It's not my favorite score of the year, but I'd be perfectly okay with Johnny Greenwood winning an Oscar for it. I just prefer other scores better. I do think it's one of the best scores of the year, but it didn't immediately rise to the occasion of being my best score. There are some moments in it that are, you know, just perfection, but I don't think the whole score. When I sit down and try to put in a score to listen to from the year, where I'm like, which one do I think I'll remember and I'll recognize and I'll hear and I'll be like, oh, that's the score from this movie. I don't think it'd be One Battle. Um, but then again, I think a lot of films have been left along the wayside this year in terms of score. Even like The Mastermind, like nobody mentions that score. It's a great score. This film is directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, PTA. Um, so when your parents say that they're having a PTA meeting, you don't know if they're actually going to your school or if they're just going to somebody else's house to watch Paul Thomas Anderson movies. It stars Leonardo DiCaprio, Sean Penn, Chase Infinity, Benicio del Toro, Tiana Taylor, Regina Hall, Tony Goldwyn, and some other people. But yeah, Tony Goldwyn, it's weird that we just keep skipping over him, but he's part of the Christmas Club. Anyway, which I thought was an interesting casting choice. It's also interesting that we just keep leaving his name off. He has relatively the same amount of time that some of the other characters do. Anyway, so is it good? Yeah, of course it is. But is it great? No. I know that's a hard thing to say. What is greatness though in this year? I think greatness is so hard to quantify. Greatness is not just throwing a film in that is at the right time and that it slaps at the right time. And you're like, oh my God, this film is so 2025. That doesn't necessarily make it Best Picture of the Year. That just makes it timely. That makes it, you know, uh, I don't know, a great marketing campaign. I mean, I think it's funny that we put such an emphasis on film festivals, for example, and that these Oscar qualifying movies all released at film festivals. If One Battle wins Best Picture, it didn't go to a festival. Neither did Oppenheimer. Do you know what I'm saying? Like these films are breaking almost the entire uh, film festival brand by shooting straight to the top like that. So, I just, for me, since the conversation has gravitated so much towards One Battle After Another or Die, I think it's a great movie. I do, and it's probably in my top. It's definitely my top 25. It's just I don't know that it is. It's just it's not my number one. I don't know where it is. Somewhere between 1 and 25, somewhere in there. I think this movie exists, and after the second viewing, some of the thoughts that I had after the first viewing were the fact I thought Sean Penn kind of dominated the film in terms of being the most interesting performance. That got balanced a little on the second viewing when I had audio description. I came to appreciate DiCaprio's performance a lot more than I had initially appreciated it for. I do think it's a little bit more of a challenging performance than his. I actually like him more here than in the last couple movies he's done. So the films where he hasn't managed to get uh, Oscar nominations, like Don't Look Up, Killers of the Flower Moon, I think this is a better role for him. Um, I like Chase Infinity. I don't know that I understand the Oscar conversation for her. I think she's just a nice breakthrough actress performer. Um, but some of the performances that I've seen from lead actresses this year, just not on the same level. She's not on the same level as some of those people. There are people who aren't even being floated or who are likely to miss out on nominations, whose performances are just more grounded and emotionally invested. She's a teenager playing a teenager who gets thrown into the shit and reacts to it in a way that most teenagers would. She just is able to. What's impressive about her is that she stands her own against these, some of these titans like DiCaprio and Penn, who she shares the screen with a lot. She has a lot of screen time with Regina Hall. Um, but yeah, I didn't understand the conversation around Del Toro. I honestly still don't. I think it's a great role, but like, damn, dude, winning Best Supporting Actor for this, like, that's again, that's a tall order. I think there are better performances this year, but I actually think he's better in Phoenician's scheme, if I'm being honest. Um, he plays a great best friend role. Like it's a solid performance, and I came to appreciate that more, but not enough to give him the Oscar for it. Um, I think Sean Penn brings levels of complexity to a role that is it can easily just be written off as being the just like a straight villain of the film because of the sort of the things that he's willing to do, the lengths at which he's willing to go to. But there's so much weird complexity and this dynamic that he has with Tiana Taylor that is in like the beginning of the film is so interesting. It's so intriguing. And um, later on, it's so hard to get a read out of what he wanted out of that exchange that he has with Chase Infinity that I think Penn plays this. He's been acting for years. He's a two-time Academy Award winner. There are levels and layers of complexity that are running through his brain where he's making choices, like little infinitesimal choices that make this not just a simple villain. It's not one of the most brilliant villains to ever come across our screen. It's not something that I feel like needs to have an Academy Award like that became so instantly iconic, like Christoph Waltz in Glorious Bastards, where you know, like he'll go down as being one of the greatest cinematic villains ever. like a performance that just hits you and there's like, well, there's nothing else. Um, so I think it's a very complex role that he brings a lot of depth to, interestingly. And Tiana Taylor, I question whether or not she can win with this. It's not a big performance. It's not a lot. When I look at something like what Devine Joy Randolph did to win for Holdovers, I don't think Tiana has quite the screen time or the emotional range given or that big monologue we're all looking for. You know, she really is only in a fraction of the movie. And then Regina Hall is kind of also only in a fraction of the movie and feels very much like a support, although it's a really cool character. I kind of wanted to see more of both of them. And I think that's the problem is screen time. I could say that about Del Toro too, that because he plays the best friend role for DiCaprio, that DiCaprio ends up absorbing so much of the screen time that it kind of is at a detriment to Del Toro. But the interesting thing about Paul Thomas Anderson is that he's been really great about doing ensemble movies before, like Magnolia and Boogie Nights. So he's not afraid of moving the camera and leaving his leading man out of it. He's not afraid from moving to character and showing other characters and giving them their time on screen. I just think it's interesting how he chose to balance it. A film like Magnolia feels like a true ensemble piece because it's equally balanced between the characters, or at least the storylines. There might be still some lead slash supporting dynamic between each of the storylines, but there it's hard to define who is the lead of Magnolia. I think it can be interpreted in many different ways. Boogie Nights, it's easy to just write off Mark Wahlberg and say, well, that's since Wahlberg's performance, obviously, right? Um, but even in that, he spends quite a bit of time fleshing out the rest of the ensemble, all the way down to the smaller characters. So by the time you have left the film, you feel like you have a fully realized idea of who all of them are and and their performances. And here, I think it's a little bit more uneven. I would love to see a little bit more from some characters, um, and even if that meant more runtime. I know that's a weird thing to say, but that this film, which is already a long film, that the balance could come in runtime or could have come maybe at the expense of something else. I don't know. I don't know what the balance is, but I think he does a better job of supporting his cast here than maybe Marty Supreme, which Josh Safdie directs with like a connective magneticism to Timothy Chalamet, like the camera is not allowed to leave his presence, and it becomes really hard to follow. There's so few scenes in that film that don't feature him. He's gone for seconds. You know what I'm saying? Like just seconds at a time, you cut to somebody else for something and check in on somebody doing something that's relevant to what he needs them to do. And then immediately you're back. Here, DiCaprio can disappear for a minute because we got to go check on see what Sean Penn's doing. Then we got to go because he gets separated from Chase Infinity. We got to check on her storyline. So it balances itself a lot better. And DiCaprio isn't just such a dominant performance over the entire movie. There's been a lot of criticism thrown at this movie for its depiction of domestic terrorism and the justification for it versus, the fighting against the man and how we see that used in today's society. Um, I think it's interesting because this film definitely, at its production cost, definitely didn't film and release in the same year. So for everybody who is like, oh my God, this is reactionary to the Trump era, it's like the Trump era began in January and this movie came out in September. They did not make this movie that fast. They did not start pre-production, go into production, post-production. This is one of those films where you just sort of happen into a timeliness. This story was planned, it was shot, it was released, and the fact that you're drawing conclusions from it to the current era says more about our current era than it does the movie. Um, it's sort of like this year, a couple films that I've noticed that are about people who are struggling financially, like Roofman and Dead Man's Wire. It's like those films feel timely because people are struggling financially. Um, this would have been kind of an excellent year for West Side Story to release, with I Want to Be in America being sung. So films just feel timely in the moment, but a lot of these films have been in gestating in production for a long time. Wicked, when the wizard makes the comment about when Elphaba says something to him about how he'll tell all of Oz, and he said they won't believe you because people would rather buy into the lie than admit that they were ever fooled to begin with. Basically, that's what he says. It feels timely because of the world that's created around it, but that film was shot a long time ago and that line was uttered before the current administration. Like, um, and I know this is hard because like the conservative critics out there keep throwing these things out there and they keep getting clicks, but really, if this had been Kamala Harris's administration, how would these films have reacted? How would these films have worked? Would they have been, would One Battle After Another be winning Best Picture if it didn't feature a scene where they're trying to free migrants from a detention center? Like if we weren't detaining migrants in horrific conditions, would it ring true? Would people give as much of a shit? Or would Paul Thomas Anderson be ending up with yet another Best Picture nominee, but not a winner, and maybe a directing nominee, but not a win? Like the kind of things that he seems more likely to get typically. Arguably, he should have had an Oscar by now. He's got like 11 nominations. It's bizarre that he doesn't have one. So I don't mind that he wins for this. It doesn't have to be my favorite movie of the year to sit there and go, it's time for Paul Thomas Anderson to get an Oscar. But would he have, um, if the political climate was different, if America had voted a different way, and if the politics of our current era did not reflect these films, and therefore people didn't identify with them, or conversely, would the kind of people who are rallying against these movies see them in a different light because they would then be the underdogs rallying against? Would the January 6th crowd, then identify with DiCaprio's revolutionary um, style? Is it possible that just because what they're, uh, you know, charging against uh, is current, that you see it as one side, but if it was taken out of context to where it wasn't so easily definable in our current landscape, because the situation was different, would the tables turn, and would the people who are criticizing One Battle suddenly see it as a rallying cry for them? So I think that's what's interesting about cinema is when you actually break it down, which is why I waited to review One Battle After Another, is to actually be able to sit there and think and go, okay, what is this? What is he trying to say here? I don't think he's excusing domestic terrorism. I think he's just using it as a platform for discussion around various topics, and sort of highlighting and showing you things and trying to lean you into certain directions to where you realize maybe perhaps these are not the way that we should do things. You know, maybe there are better ways of handling the migrant crisis. Maybe it is sort of horrifying that there's, like a white nationalist Christmas society out there, uh, or I guess an equivalent to that. Maybe the hypocrisy of somebody like a Sean Penn character, when you actually get to see, because that's always the thing. When you have a character like Sean Penn, we don't actually get to see the whole story. We get whatever they tell us. So in film format, you get to see the before, the after, you get to see the whole thing. So you get to know whether or not he's lying. You get to know whether or not something isn't true because you saw the thing that happened before towards the beginning of the movie. So the hypocrisy is palpable and visible and tangible, um, which is something that we don't get. We get, we have to decipher. There's an old saying, believe none of what you hear and only half of what you see. Not great for blind people because then we can't believe anything. But so, but what it means is essentially that you should be careful with where your trust is being placed. And I think in this day and age, it's becoming harder to go, where is this coming from? So I think Paul Thomas Anderson has to battle a lot of those ideas after another in this project, which is what makes it audacious. And I do think it is one of the greatest movies of the year. I just don't have it as my best movie of the year. So, um, but damn, it's a great movie. And it's fun. And I think the only reason why it's getting any fire and attention at quite the level it is because it happened to land at the right time. Now, some of the other films that land at the right time, I think were just mismarketed. I think if Roofman had opened a little bit more at Christmas, where it actually kind of has Christmas to it, and you saw the struggle of a man trying to get Christmas gifts and families trying to get Christmas gifts, that it might might have hit a little bit better than the beginning of October, um, which is when it landed. So I just think that was a marketing blemish for them, because the film is very accessible and sellable, and most people who have actually seen Roofman enjoy it. So it's not really, it may not be the best picture of the year, but the fact that it did not hit at the box office is more indicative of when it was released instead of the film itself. But I think we're gravitating towards films that speak towards us, and people are reacting in different ways. I think part of the reason why people have backed away from Wicked for Good is because they think it's some sort of uh, treatise on the current political climate, but it can't be, because the film was made already. You know what I'm saying? Like, they shot part one and part two back to back, just sort of the same. Like, we're stuck with Three Strangers movies. We're getting Three Strangers movies where you like, whether you like it or not. So there was always going to be a Wicked for Good. They weren't going to do it like the final Divergent movie, where they hadn't filmed part two yet. So the series just doesn't have an end because they split the book into two parts, and then they didn't film part two. Anyway, uh, you get what I'm saying. So one battle after another, I think is great. I'm gonna give it an 8.8 out of 10. It's just not my best picture of the year. You might see it on my top 10 list though. You'll wait for that though. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the other side.